China and Australia have started a new chapter in their relations as their leaders agree to build trust and overcome differences. President Xi Jinping has held talks with Prime Minister Anthony Albanese in Beijing. Now, it is the first visit by an Australian leader to China in 7 years. Mr Xi says that he is glad that bilateral ties have embarked on the right path of improvement. The Chinese leader acknowledged that Mr Albanese's efforts to mend relations and says that both sides have resolved some problems. Mr Xi also expressed interest on continuing a comprehensive strategic partnership with Australia. Prime Minister Albanese says that he's satisfied with positive engagement with China and says that it's important to maintain communication with Beijing even when differences arise. He also says that trade is flowing more freely between the two nations. For more, CNA's Lo Minmin joins us. She's live for us in Shanghai. Minmin, PM Albanese is mending ties with China, so he says, all while keeping strong military relations with the United States, though. Is Beijing concerned about that?
Yes, of course. Security issues are often the most intractable ones for China. And we know that Canberra has been opposed to China's claim in the South China Sea. Australia has been carrying out joint military exercises with the Philippines, Japan and the US in the South China Sea. And then there is the AUKUS deal, which allows Australia to acquire a nuclear-powered submarine, which, of course, will be perceived by Beijing as a threat. So these are issues that will have to be managed delicately, even as both sides dial down economic tensions. And that makes a lot of sense for both countries because their economies are highly intertwined. Australia relies on China for at least a quarter of their exports. And meanwhile, China's economic recovery post-COVID-19 had fallen short of expectation. So China will want to lobby Australia for its support to join the CPTPP, which is a free trade deal for countries on both sides of the Pacific. China had applied to join in 2021, but has yet to receive unanimous approval from all the existing member states. China, of course, can also gain from more access to Australia's rich minerals and natural resources, including liquefied natural gas and lithium, which is useful for making electric vehicles. So, Beijing will want to woo Australia to make sure it doesn't fall too closely in step with America's hawkish China policy.
Meantime, we're also hearing that Chinese Vice Premier He Lifeng is scheduled to visit the United States. That's for talks with the Treasury Secretary, Janet Yellen, and perhaps ahead of the APEC summit meeting that is going to take place next week. That meeting, of course, could see Xi Jinping and Joe Biden come face to face for the first time in a long time. Can you tell us more about that?
The Chinese side has not provided any details on what is on the agenda for Mr. He's 5-day visit to the United States. Meanwhile, the U.S. side has downplayed any expectation for specific deliverables from the meeting. We know that Ms. Yellen had first met Vice Premier He Lifeng in Beijing in July when she visited in a bid to stabilize relations amid growing restrictions of U.S. exports of semiconductors and investment into China. Now, many of the issues that they discussed then are still unresolved now, and that includes the U.S.'s call for a fairer playing field for U.S. companies in China, what Ms. Yellen had called unfair economic practices and coercive actions against U.S. firms. We're talking about those raids into U.S. consultancy firms based on national security grounds. There are also worries that China could dump more goods on the global market using state subsidies to undercut global prices. And meanwhile, Beijing has been calling on the U.S. to stop imposing unilateral sanctions that they say go against the norm of free trade and to stop weaponizing the concept of national security. So it remains to be seen whether whether they will come to some form of understanding with this visit and whether they will agree to step up macroeconomic policy coordination amid global economic headwinds. But a lot is at stake as they lay the path for a successful meeting between President Xi and President Joe Biden, which could set the tone for the relationship going forward.
Min, thank you very much for that. Lo Min there reporting for us from Shanghai.